Hi everyone, welcome to the next lesson in this sequence of Humanities Year 7 lessons. Today we're going to move on to look at the concept of food miles. So if you'd like to pause the video here a moment and in your book or on a piece of paper, write down the title, Gwaith Dosbarth and today's date. Okay, so today we're going to be using some of our numeracy skills, just basic addition, to calculate the food miles for different recipes. What we'll then do is talk about how food miles can impact on the environment by writing a short explanation text, and then we're going to come up with some ideas on how we can reduce food miles. So, let's get started. From last lesson, we could see clearly that some of the products that we import into the UK have travelled thousands of miles from other countries. Now, sometimes this can't be helped for the three reasons we talked about last lesson. We either can't grow or produce it here, it's cheaper from somewhere else, or it's better quality from somewhere else. But sometimes some of the things that we're using, butter for example, Anchor butter gets flown 11,000 miles from New Zealand. All you need to make butter is cows and milk. We can make that down the road. So why are we flying butter thousands of miles into the UK, creating lots of air pollution when we could buy it from farmers markets down the road, locally produced? Let's take a look at some common recipes. So this is a little sort of come dine with me style exercise. Imagine you're hosting a dinner party, and these are the 4 recipes that you're going to be creating for your barbecue or dinner party or birthday party, whatever. For each of these recipes, you'll see there's a list of ingredients. Okay? Quite basic ingredients. In the handout that goes with this lesson, you've also got a load of ingredients. Okay? What I'd like you to do for each recipe is on the ingredients list, find each of the ingredients and write down the number of miles that that ingredient has travelled. For each of the ingredients in the recipe, add up each of the food miles to give a total number of food miles for that one recipe. So for example, for turkey and bacon kebabs, I would write down the number of miles that the Gower bacon has travelled, the Norfolk turkey breast, the onions, the Gower honey and the mustard. And you'll find all of those on the ingredients card that goes with this lesson. In the front of your books then, very simply, just put basic rough workings out. So this is a made up recipe, it's not one of these 4, but blueberry muffin, 11 miles for one ingredient, 711 miles for another ingredient, so on, so on, so on. Add up all the ingredients to give a total number of food miles for that recipe. So for this first one, you would write in the front of your book, turkey and bacon kebabs, and then number of miles, 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 add them all together, and write down the total number of food miles for that recipe. Do that for all 4 of these recipes, please. Pause the video here a moment, go ahead and complete that task. Okay, so what you'll find is that for some of these recipes, the food miles are far higher than for others, and it tends to be recipes like your apple flapjack, for example. Sugarcane, we can't grow that in this country, and you need sugar to also make syrup, so that's got to be imported from quite a large distance. Your butter also is probably coming from, which butter did I put in this one? Yes, Anchor, so that's coming 11,500 miles from New Zealand. So when you've got products that have to be imported because we either can't grow them here or they're better quality somewhere else, that's going to put your food miles right up. And some of them can't be avoided, like your sugars, for example. We simply can't grow that in this country. But butter, we could slash our food miles on that. Same with a lot of our meat. We can get bacon from pigs reared on Gower. It doesn't have to come from Denmark in Europe. We can get turkey breast from Norfolk over the border in England. It doesn't have to come from Eastern Europe, sorry. So what issues could really high food miles give us from an environmental point of view? If we're having to fly them by plane, ship them by boat, drive them by road, move them by rail, all of these transport methods run on fossil fuels. They run on petrol or diesel, and when you burn fossil fuel, you get lots of smoke given off. And that smoke contains a gas called carbon dioxide. Now, the reason we're worried about carbon dioxide is it's going up into our atmosphere and it's messing about with the temperature of our planet, and it's causing something called global warming. So we're worried about food miles because global warming can cause a lot of different problems around the world. So what we need to ask ourselves sometimes when we're making things is it really necessary? Could we cut our food miles in one way or another? So before we move on to talking about how we can cut our food miles, I'd like you to copy and complete this explanation text, which outlines how food miles can impact on our environment. So some products, they are flown or driven or shipped miles and miles and miles using transport networks that run on fossil fuels like petrol and diesel. And when we burn those, we get a smoke given off called carbon dioxide. Carbon dioxide goes up into the air and it makes a layer around the top of our atmosphere, it makes a layer around our Earth, which is causing our Earth to heat up because it traps too much of the sun's rays. And that heating up, scientists call it global warming. It's also known as climate change. In order to cut the amount of air pollution from food miles, we could buy local instead of buying global. Butter is the perfect example, as we've already discussed. So what that would also do is support our own farmers in Britain. It would put the money in their pockets instead of the farmers in New Zealand, and it would mean that our farmers in Britain have got more money to support their families and grow their business and therefore contribute to the British economy as well. So pause the video here a minute, copy and complete this text. All the words you need for the gaps are in the box underneath. Okay, let's take a little look at what sort of words you should have in here. So aeroplanes, lorries and boats all use petrol. Petrol gives off a smoky gas called carbon dioxide. Carbon dioxide pollutes the air. It makes a layer of smoke around the Earth, which traps the sun's heat and makes the Earth heat up. We can't actually see this smoke. It's not like smoke from a fire. It's like a layer of transparent gases, really. This heating up is what scientists call global warming. It's also known as climate change. If we buy our food local, so it's from farms within Britain, this means we cut down on food miles because it's not being flown and driven and shipped from countries all around the world. So there is less pollution going into the air. It also means that local farmers keep their jobs so they can earn money to feed their families. We're putting our money into the pockets of our own farmers in our own country. So it does seem like cutting down on food miles would be a good idea, not only for the environment to reduce climate change, but also for our own British economy because we're putting money back into our own country. So what I'd like you to do is put a bubble in the middle of a page, how can I reduce food miles? And do a little bit of Googling. Literally type into the internet, how can we reduce food miles? How can we eat more sustainably? How can we cut down on food miles? And see if you can find 5 things that you could change about the way you buy your food or the way you create your recipes at home, perhaps with your parents, that might cut down on food miles to help save the environment. Pause the video here a moment and see if you can find 3 to 5 ways around this spider diagram. Okay, so just to finish, here's a couple of ideas. We could look more closely at the country of origin labels on food products. When you're buying things in the supermarket, it will always tell you by law somewhere on the label the country that it was produced in. So Anchor butter, for example, versus Kerrygold butter. Anchor comes from New Zealand, Kerrygold comes from Ireland. Much less food miles. Eat foods that are in season in the UK and use farmers' markets. So strawberries, for example, when they're in season, we can grow them in the UK during the summer months. But buying strawberries in the middle of winter, we can't grow them in Britain. We have to ship them over from Europe. So that creates more food miles when we're eating foods that are not growing naturally in the UK because we're eating them out of season. Use farm shops or pick your own. Like when you go to pick your own pumpkins on Gower or pick your own Christmas trees on Gower, you can pick your own strawberries, you can pick your own fruit and veg. It's quite a nice little day out, something extra to do, especially with lockdown lifting. It's a nice outdoor activity to take part in. And farm shops as well. You'll find these dotted all over the place. They're really popular now. You can also get homemade jams, homemade breads, homemade cakes, all sorts. And they actually, in my opinion, taste even better than they do from the supermarkets. You could get into growing your own veg as well. Make a little veg patch in the garden, or, you know, like the little cress heads used to grow watercress in a pair of tights in a cup in primary school. Or do I just sound like a crazy person? Nobody does that anymore. I don't know. But you can get really simple kits to grow your own herbs and spices on your kitchen windowsill even. What you could also do is download the Geeky app. It tells you how sustainable your product is when you scan the barcode. It tells you whether the ingredients that have gone into it have been sustainably sourced, which is a word that means that it doesn't damage the environment too much, and it makes sure that farmers get a fair price for the product that they're making. And it also means that there's probably going to be less food miles going into that and therefore less air pollution. So if you haven't got 5 things around your spider diagram, feel free to pick a couple of these off and add them, or even if you want to add even more, then take them off this list and put them onto your spider diagram, and see if there's any that you could actually adapt and put into your own life to help reduce climate change by reducing food miles. If you have any questions about this lesson, just ask your subject teacher or drop me an email, gleesona@hopecymru.net, and I'll see you soon for the next lesson.